Family Matters is a program focusing on uniting and strengthening the family by providing valuable information on all facets of family life. In this monthly series, Raymond and Brenda Johnson will focus on the definition and importance of family.
Welcome to Family Matters. I'm Leanne Andriani, filling in for Kyle Schwartz. Again today we have Brenda Johnson and Raymond Johnson. They're here to talk to us about parenting again. How are you guys doing today?
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Great. Wonderful, wonderful. Now can you do a recap of why parenting is an important topic for us to talk about?
Parenting is so vitally important because as parents you have the role of deciding or creating a positive or negative adult for society. It's important for you to parent with love, and it's important for you to parent with specific instructions to guide the young person into society and how they will communicate with society once they get there. And it's not up to the school, it's not up to the church, it's not up to society in general to point the child. I mean, they come alongside to help, but parents are the major factor that determines how that child will be as an adult.
Wonderful. Now, obviously, sometimes with parenting, you're kind of thrown into that kind of situation. How can someone prepare themselves? Where should they look for training?
Well, training is everywhere, especially now in the information age. You can take parenting classes, you can go online and read. There's countless books, magazines, CDs, DVDs that will instruct you on parenting. And a lot of times people are thrown into it. Maybe the pregnancy wasn't planned and they find out that they're going to become parents. Well, the first thing they do is decide what color they're going to paint the nursery, what kind of diapers they're going to use, and they start gathering all these possessions to take care of this child. But rarely do they say, let's take a parenting class. Let's go and get some training, some instruction on becoming a parent, because you have 9 months to do that.
Well, one of the things too, when dealing with parenting, when you get ready to become a parent, one thing that all of us have been, a child.
Right? Is this true? That's your one experience,
That's your
at least,
one
right?
experience,
Yeah.
right? You've actually been a child. So we're always learning, and we have parents, right? And we're all a product of our upbringing, good, bad, and different. We're all a product of that. So one of the things we can do is look back at our own childhood. How did our parents raise us? Was that positive? Was that negative? We're always learning. People are always teaching us something. Some people are teaching us what not to do,
Right.
and some people are teaching us what to do. So you can always look back at your own experience. I think that's good. How was I raised? How did I
Yes.
turn out? I'm a little crazy, so maybe I don't want to raise my children in that same way. But you are learning lessons from, okay, that wasn't good. My parents didn't communicate with me. That's not good. I need to, man, my parents were great. We used to do family meetings and ate dinner together. That's something that I'll do. So we can use our experience to learn, and all of these other tools that are out there.
Right.
Right.
I know that I've seen different parental experiences with just my friends and how they were raised compared to how I was raised. So that would be
Right.
another resource, right? Going to
Right.
your parents, going to friends' parents, figuring out how they handled situations.
Yes, and most of them are willing to talk about it. They enjoy talking about it, and they'll share with you the mistakes they made. So it's important for you to open up and ask people, and your family and friends are a great resource.
And one of the things we want to talk about, there are boundaries, and I'll let Brenda talk about this some. There are boundaries, and just because we use all those experience, but one of the things that's important is to understand your child's personality, their bent, you know,
Yeah.
as it were, in life.
Yeah.
So just because we're one way, when you have a child, they could be totally opposite of, you know, what you are. They could turn out being like your brother, like your sister.
My sister and I always tease about that. We're convinced that we'll have each other's child,
Child.
basically. Yeah, because we're so different.
Different,
exactly.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So that comes into play, and that factored in to how your parents parented each one of you. You know what I mean?
Very
'Cause-
much so with us, at least.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know, it's like,
Right.
well, she's allowed to do more. Well, we trust her more
Right.
than we trust you.
Right.
But all that plays in. But we talk about boundaries. Talk about
Yeah, all children need boundaries. They need healthy boundaries, and from the very beginning, and it starts when they're very young because they don't know what what's dangerous and what's not. So it starts from the time that they start moving around on their own. There needs to be healthy boundaries. And as they grow older, those boundaries change, but there still has to be those boundaries in their lives that they will be able to set their own boundaries, because when they enter school, they have to learn that there are certain boundaries that mom and dad is not there on that particular day. So they have to set boundaries with their friends. They have to know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And it starts from a very young age. And it's very important for adults to model the fact that they have boundaries also. When a child sees that the parents are just reckless, or the parents make bad decisions and they have to live with the repercussions of those decisions, it's important for the child to see the parents set healthy boundaries. And you don't do your child any favors by not being able to tell them no. And you don't do yourself any favors by not being able to tell others no. And your child is watching, your child is listening, and so it's very important for those boundaries. And a lot of times people will say, well, I want them to make their own decisions. Of course we do. We're training them to gradually be able to make their own decisions, but we can't take a hands-off approach and just allow them to discover on their own. We don't tell them, oh, well, this is the kitchen and this is the stove, but we tell them, if you touch that, it's going to burn your hand. We don't say, well, just go in there and explore and see what you would want to play around with. If you want to cook, go ahead and cook, you know. We have to give them all these boundaries for life. And boundaries does not mean that you have such control over the child that you turn the child into a little robot.
Right.
Well, and one of the things is that as we're training them, they're going to make their decisions based on the value system
Right.
that they learned at home. That you're training them to be independent, and they're not really ever independent because they're going to use the value system that they were taught at home.
Right.
What was important to us at home. You know, people go, oh, they learned that at school. No. All the research and statistics tell us that the #1 influence on a child or children is still their parents.
Yes.
It's still the environment that they were raised up in. So you're teaching them to be independent, but when you're teaching them the value system, that what's important for us here, then when they go out, they'll be independent, but they'll make decisions based on the values that they were taught at home, and that's key.
Yes. And the big challenge as parents is to find that healthy balance between the boundaries and the control and the freedom that the child needs to have to grow. That's the biggest challenge. I've seen both ends of the spectrum. I know parents who are just non-existent. They're off making money, they're off traveling, they're doing what they feel like doing, and the children are left to just find their way. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where parents are so strict that the child is not allowed to have friends over, they're not allowed to go anywhere, they're not allowed to have a social life, they're not allowed to do any activities without the parent being present. And both ends, both of those opposites are unhealthy for the child. It's challenging, but you can find a balance for your household, that the children are taken care of, and you also get to enjoy some of the pleasures of your own life too. And you're gradually releasing control, but you're not doing one extreme or the other. And it's very important to be able to find that balance, and also remember that what worked for your first child may not work for the third child. One child may be ready to drive at 16. Another one may not be ready to drive until 18. And they will usually let you know. And it's important for parents to be involved with the child extensively. Then you will know who's ready and who's not.
You know, and I like to look at it as, probably read this years ago, about it's like our children being in a box. And when they're young, that box is very small. We have to tell them everything. We have to give them direction about everything. And we are teaching them the lessons at that level in their life. As they master that, you expand the box. And then we're going to introduce more information.
Right.
And then
Yes.
as you master that, we expand the box. Because the goal for all of us should be to raise up healthy children that one day will leave home and go out and be a healthy part of society, right?
Productive part of society.
We
yeah.
want to be productive. We don't want them, you know, climbing through people's windows at night. But
Right. Right.
and that's important. We want them to be productive. But the whole modeling the desired behavior is important. Too many parents send the message, we model everything, we teach them everything. We know children that will not eat vegetables. Why is that? Because their parents didn't eat vegetables. And parents have to understand, and I talk about this, you are teaching your child faith, or you're teaching them fear, you're teaching them everything. You're teaching them everything. If you have to be able to look at yourself as a parent and say, okay, I know I don't like broccoli, I know I don't like Brussels sprouts, but I understand it's important for me not to transfer my negative dislikes onto my child, because I know they need to eat broccoli.
They're very keen
I know they-
observers. Yeah,
you
so
know.
what you do, they do, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
So we have children that only eat fast food. I don't like fruit. I don't like vegetables. Why not? Not because the school didn't have it available.
Right,
It's
right.
because they didn't have it available at home. So we're teaching those things, and as we expand that box, so that then when they go out, whatever their path of life might be, some it'll be college, some it'll be training school, some it'll be just go to work, right? Whatever path they go, they'll be eating vegetables. You know what I mean? Because that's what they were taught. So we think that's very important.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to make sure that the children understand that your likes and dislikes are important, but sometimes they don't even want to try.
Right.
So
Right.
we have to expose them to things so that they will at least make an attempt. And maybe you end up not liking green beans, but you do have some other
to
choices
try.
because you've explored enough and you've tried enough. And we have to train them in every aspect. The best way that children learn is through training. That's why we have the entire school system and college system that we have, is because it works. Training works, specific training works, and then you talk about hands-on training. You have to allow children to do. You have to allow children, you can't just tell a child, clean your room, clean your room. You show them how, you model it. You also give them the opportunity to clean it, even though they're not going to clean it the way that you do. But you still allow them. I know parents who would not allow their children, no, I'm not going to let them vacuum because they're not going to do it the way I
They
do
won't
it.
learn that way.
They
but
won't learn.
You don't want to visit those children's house when they're an adult.
Right?
You know?
Yeah, 'cause they don't
Right.
know how to do
They
it.
don't know how
Yeah,
to do
exactly.
Right, so you have to let them have the experience, and you also have to understand that they are going to make mistakes along the way.
course.
They are going to have some hurts along the way. They're going to lose some friends in life. That's a part of life. They're going to make mistakes and have some regrets of things that they wish they had not done. And we all do. But it's important for you to let the child know that life is not going to be perfect.
Right. And that goes into the control issue too. You can't control everything
Right,
that happens
you cannot
to them.
control
Right.
everything that happens to them, and they have to be able to find solutions to whatever issue comes up. And you talk to them about problem solving and resolving conflict, and all of those things are part of that training. And you don't have to take out a textbook for it. You use your everyday life situations as a teaching moment. If something happens to them, or if something happens to a friend, you take that opportunity and use that example as a teaching moment.
Well, and we talked about it's going to carry into adulthood. So at your household, maybe when you had disagreements, you guys talked about it.
Usually, yes. Yep.
But
Lots
then
of family meetings.
you meet
Right.
a lot of family meetings, right? You
Yeah.
talk it out. Well, you meet a young man, and you end up getting married, and then you have a conflict, and you
Right.
go, let's talk about it. And he goes, talk about what? You know what I mean? I don't want to talk about it.
We all have different ways of
Yeah,
handling
and
our
you're like,
families.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
we used to
Yeah,
we used
yeah.
to talk about it.
Right.
Well, I don't want to talk about it. In my house, when we had disagreements, we yelled and screamed at each other, and then we walked off, and we never resolved. And then you're going, oh.
So what do you do? At
Yeah,
that
what
point,
you know
right?
what I mean? What do you
Yeah.
do in that point? That's why for the the single people that are out there. That's why premarital counseling is crucial, because in premarital counseling we do a lot of that. We're going to teach them how to fight fear. We're going to help you understand that, Leanne, in your house, how did you guys resolve? And you'll talk about, Joe, how did you guys, well, we used to, you know, yell at each other. Well, obviously, you know what I mean? We can't do that if we're going to build our relationship. But because of the experience, you know, a lot of young people are in shock. They're like, "Oh, where did that side of him come from?"
Right.
Because he's going to be your knight in shining armor, right?
Right.
While
and then
you're
sometimes those
dating
stressful situations don't occur until marriage, right?
until marriage.
Right.
And we can guarantee they're going to come up in marriage. So all of that comes in. And she mentioned something, and I was looking at some stats here, understanding how people learn. That is very important to understand how children learn, how people learn. I used to, as a former academic and teacher, one of the things I did every year when I started the year, I gave all of my students a learning styles survey so that I would learn what their learning style is and that they would understand what their learning style is. Same thing goes in parenting,
Yeah,
right?
they could share it with their parents.
How do my children learn? You know, and I was looking at, who is this from? I forget, Parenting Study Guide. I don't have the reference. But they have a, how people learn. Hearing 10%, seeing 15%, both see and hear 20%, discuss 40%, experience 80%, and teaching 90%.
Wow. So obviously that experience in teaching really comes into play.
Yes, it comes into play. So that is very important.
Yes, and everything that as your child grows older and goes into teenage years and adulthood, it's important to, and people think that, well, because they have more decision-making power now and that box is a lot bigger now, that they don't need the parents anymore.
I was just saying that does not mean the job is done. I call my mom all the time.
Right, right.
And
yeah.
that's a part of parenting that never ends, because as your child reaches the age of 18 and maybe goes off to college or goes off to career school or wherever they go, the parents have to also change their box and recognize that now you're dealing with an adult. It's no longer a parent-baby relationship, and it's no longer a parent-child relationship. It's a parent-advisor relationship. And as you're still parenting, but your role changes also. And a lot of times the child adjusts, but the adults do not adjust. So the parent has to learn to adjust also. And I've become a little upset when I see a lot of parents of adult children that don't get along with them once they become adults.
Yeah, it's the worst thing.
And I think it stems from the whole childhood progression and the way you communicate it from the very beginning. And then once you get to adulthood, there's all these clashes that's going on because now this is an adult. So parenting can be complex, but if you take what you have in your everyday life and you use it in those teaching moments, you can have a great relationship once they've moved out of your house. You have a great parenting experience still.
And there's, because a biblical principle is that there's was a wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
Right.
The number one counselor, you should be calling your mom and dad first.
I always do, yes.
They should be the first. If you have the proper healthy relationship, your first call should be to your mom or dad. And that's how we want to raise our children, so that we're one of their counselors, and maybe their number one counselor that they call and get advice. Then they may talk to someone else, and then they're going to use that information and they're going to make a decision based on that. What she was saying is a lot of times that parents want to tell you, Leanne, this is what you need to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you
you're
resist
like,
that
I'm not
urge.
Yeah,
right?
you're
15
like, I'm
anymore.
not 15. You know what I mean? But you respond better if you say, Leanne, I don't know what you're going to do, but if it was me, I would probably think about this. Now then you're going to,
But then
contemplate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And you're like, well, I think mom would do this, dad
You're
would probably
right.
do that,
Do
and then I call
that,
them
and yeah, and see. So that's a great
Or they
thing.
can present to you some options that maybe you didn't
Options.
think about. Maybe you thought you only had 2 choices, and they say, oh, well, keep this in mind. And you find out you actually have 3 or 4 choices. And that just came from their experience.
Right. I know with my mom, a lot of times she says that I just need to talk it out, because a lot of times I'll call her, tell her what my problem is, and then by the end of the conversation, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do that. That
You
works.
solved it.
You solved
I just need to talk it through with her.
you had someone to listen
Yeah.
and maybe throw in a little, have you thought of this along the way, and you talk it out. So we see from this, I think what we draw is that parenting is a lifelong experience. It
Yes.
doesn't ever end. You know what I mean? Until you die, you know what I mean? It never ends. It just changes in our role as that box expands, and then as we put a door on the box and you walk out that door out there into the world, that you have the tools. You understand that don't always look at people through the lens of who you are, but you better analyze and look at them for who they are. Because people have a tendency to think, I would never do that to anyone, therefore no one else would ever.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Well, that's a level of naivety, right? That okay, just because I think this way, that doesn't mean that this person doesn't have bad intent. So that's
Yes.
it. We gotta, from a baby all the way to adulthood, become advisors. They go out to the world and they're going to be a success. Are they going to miss the mark? We all miss the mark, right?
Yes.
But we just hope that it's nothing that ends up in jail or anything.
Right, right. We all have our little bumps and bruises
We have
here
our
and there.
bumps and bruises, but you know that's what parenting is about.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage all the parents out there that it's never too late to get instruction on parenting, and it's never too late to ask for help. Maybe you feel like you missed some information along the way, but it's never too late. You should get counseling, get an advisor, get some mentors in your life now as an adult. Maybe your children are already grown, and maybe you are having conflicts with them now as they are adults. It's still not too late to get help. Get the help, get the training that you need, and it will help you along the way. It's no shame in getting help.
And that's, that's good. That's parenting, right?
Yeah, yeah. But of course it has its rewards, right?
Yes.
course.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
that's the great thing.
Absolutely.
Well, as always, it's been an absolute joy to have you guys on the show. Thank you
Thank
for coming
you.
on. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you as well. Again, this was Family Matters. I'm Leanne Andriani. We'll see you next time.